In general, Monster Hunter World is a game about hunting monsters, so it should come as no surprise that the battles are the main focus of the game. Battles are complex and challenging, and with so many different ways to change and improve your fighting capabilities, the game manages to stay interesting. The way battles work is simple on its face. You simply pick a weapon and attack, but considering all the different elements of a battle can make it turn heavily in your favor. The primary thing that you're looking for are opportunities to attack. These opportunities change based on what weapon you're using, what monster you're fighting, and the locale you're currently fighting in. Monster Hunter World contains 14 different weapon types, 3 ranged and 11 melee, but all unique in some form. The opportunities to attack can change drastically depending on which one you choose, and Capcom balanced these weapons in relation to these differences. Ranged weapons have low attack power, but you can attack safely and rapidly. Things like the greatsword and the hammer have high damage combos that require a long chain of uninterrupted attacks that are easily, interrupted. And the lance has simple attacks that can utilize its defensive capabilities to attack almost indefinitely. Attack opportunities change depending on which enemy you're fighting. Some move sluggishly and have slow strikes, giving good opportunities for lengthy attacks, while others are quick and have aggressive moves, which make it better to use weapons that are more hit and run. Most melee weapons will suffer when going up against monsters that fly or use ranged attacks, and ranged weapons will suffer when fighting close-range beasts with wide sweeping attacks. But whatever your disadvantage, the game allows you to gain an edge over them in other ways. The simplest way would be to let the monsters tire out. Once tired, they stop for a while, giving a big opportunity to attack them, which will be followed by them doing sloppy attacks of their own. Simply striking them long enough will cause them to tumble over as well. You can also do things like blinding monsters with flash pods, which makes them attack randomly without their vision, and it's more effective to use these against airborne enemies as it causes them to crash to the ground. You can also use things like pit and shock traps to hold enemies in place, or use smoke screens to temporarily hide yourself to get a good hit in when monsters try and sniff you out. The locale where you are engaged in combat in also has advantages or disadvantages for fighting. Some locations have natural traps that can restrain monsters, some have high points you can use to mount monsters, others have damaging hazards or hazards that put monsters to sleep or paralyze them. Be careful though, monsters can gain their own advantages in certain locations. The Odogaron can do jumping wall attacks off certain surfaces, or the Diablos can do unexpected charges out of these huge sand walls. If you're smart, you can use dung pods to force them out of these locations and into ones more beneficial to yourself, or even corral 2 monsters together, and as they fight each other, use that distraction to get a few hits in. The other major aspect of combat is the various stats and skills of your equipment. Every enemy has specific strengths and weaknesses when it comes to the different elements, and your weapons are tied to a certain element. So knowing your target's weakness can allow you to choose a weapon that will maximize the damage you can do. On the reverse side, monsters are all tied to a certain element as well. When going into battle against them, you can help mitigate the damage they do by choosing armor with the appropriate resistances. The skills your weapons and armor have are there to either bolster your strengths or weaken the strengths of monsters, like canceling out the deafening roars that monsters do, or blocking attacks that couldn't normally be blocked. Acquiring these weapons and armor are tied to the game's feedback loop. This loop is central to progressing through the game as it has no leveling system, so if you want to get stronger, you have to go about getting better equipment. The feedback loop is simple. Acquire equipment, use the new equipment to defeat monsters and collect materials, make stronger equipment, and then defeat even stronger monsters. As you progress, the game reveals other ways to get materials so as not to make the feedback loop exceptionally grindy. Aside from the feedback loop items, there are also the standard single-use items like healing potions or stat buffing consumables. And the game has a variety of temp use items like mantles that provide you with buffs and status effect immunities, most of which can be found on the skills of armor, but at their maxed out stages. These temp use items are gained by progressing through the game's story, which in a game called Monster Hunter also follows the theme of hunting monsters. The story revolves around the elder dragon Zora Magdaros, and in pursuing this beast you are introduced to every one of the game's monsters. The game focuses so heavily on these monsters that the story itself doesn't come across as very impressive, but it makes a very good stage for your hunter and their monster hunting skills. Monsters are given flashy introductions that show off some of their unique traits, and what little cutscenes do progress the story are almost certain to contain either monsters or mentions of them. Alongside the story progress is your hunter rank, which is effectively a system for tracking your skill. It increases in rank once you beat certain story missions up until the endgame, where it becomes tied to normal quests, which when completed will increase that rank, allowing you to take on harder quests and unlock new items. Monsters are also incredibly tied to the artistic theme. The city of Astera is first shown off with a large gate of monster bones. The entire city is built in a similar manner, with monster bones making up the different building materials. The bones are used as structural supports, as stands for hand railings, and even small works of art like wind chimes. Monster leather is used mostly as roof coverings and are even used as balloon materials for an airship later in the game. The weapons and armor you can craft share the theme of monsters, and the appearance of these items are directly related from the parts in which they are crafted. Like how the Uragon armor shares the protruding scutes, the Diablos armor has its trademark horns, the Rathalos charge blade has the Rathalos' scales, and the Deviljho axe looks similar to the Deviljho's mouth. NPC hunters that roam around Astera are dressed in these versions of weapons and armor. Palicos have their own unique versions as well, and even the feline cook assistants have their own wyvern skin oven mitts. Like the visual art, the audio is tied to the theme of monsters. This has less to do with the musical score and more to do with how Capcom implements the music. Every location in the game has a battle theme that is given different variations based on what you're fighting. When fighting small monsters, a quiet track with few instruments will start to play. When fighting medium-sized monsters, that track will be altered to be more lively. When finally fighting the largest monsters, the track is at its best. This track also does two other things. When a monster you're engaged with in battle begins to change locations, the track will change into its chase form until it re-engages with you. The other thing it does is alter the volume based on the distance to your target, fading as you get farther away and getting louder as you move closer. These adaptive changes will also apply to music that's bound to a certain monster and not the location, like the theme of the Basilgeuse. Kulve-Taras' theme and Xeno'jiiva's theme is different in that it will become more intense as you progress through the different stages. And to make the focus on monsters more impactful, when you're not engaged in any type of fight, there will be no music playing at all. Monster Hunter World sets out to be just what it intended to be, a game about hunting monsters. It's in the title, it's in the gameplay, it's in every facet of the game. So if you're looking for a game to fight monsters, you need not look any farther.